And I was almost completely self-taught, certainly after the private. The first loop I ever did in an aircraft was I went and hid behind a cloud on my first solo glider flight and looped it.
Yeah.
Because my instructor had said, well, get it up to about 120 and it'll loop really good. Okay.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And I also had a very self-taught early start in aviation. And that's one of the things I think that we should address with this is I was fortunate that coming from rural Alaska and learning to fly, not initially thinking it was going to be my career. So I wasn't terribly concerned about my rating, protecting my rating. I was going to be an engineer as a career. I was willing to do things that weren't quite right. And it was because the spark was good. The motivation was good. I wanted to feel three-dimensional flight. I wanted to really do the thing that I dreamed of doing. Mm-hmm. And so often that pilot is filtered out. They have a great desire. They have a great motivation. They just haven't discovered a legal and safe avenue to express it.
Right.
Because the flight training at large isn't designed for that person. It's designed for the person that says, I want to fly that big jet and get paid to do it.
That's right. So you just got your private. You're not a pilot yet because you don't have an instrument rating.
Yes.
Right? It isn't you're not a pilot yet because you don't have very good stick and rudder skills.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You need an instrument rating.
I didn't have or I didn't know of a legal and safe way to express this desire for a three-dimensional flight.
Right.
So I was very fortunate. I came across a couple of aerobatic instructors when I was in college, and they straightened me out. I realized, yeah, Mike Karate and Bob Swiginnis, they were my first mentors that really straightened me out, got me on the path of legality. I didn't even have a pilot's license. And I didn't really plan on getting one because the joke in Alaska is if you don't have a pilot's license, they can't take it from you.
Well, one of the stories that I think I've heard, that I know I've heard, and I think is true, is that you said at some point that the only reason you were training for the private certificate was because IAC wouldn't let you compete unless you had one.
That's right. Yeah. So Mike and Bob had started this aerobatic club and they had a super decathlon. And I thought, that's cool. So I went up and took a flight in it. And they said, hey, we've got an aerobatic contest coming up in a couple months. You want to do that? And I was like, yeah, sign me up. What are the requirements? And it was this, that, and the other thing. And one of them was you had to have a pilot's license. And I was like, oh. About that. And I think I had about 60 or 70 hours. I was flying the Stinson back and forth to a gold mine for work as a student pilot solo. So I definitely leaned into the solo flight thing. Once I got soloed, it was like, bye, I don't need you anymore.
Well, even then that was illegal, just so you know.
No, I had a 50-mile sign-off. So I had a 50-mile repeated cross-country sign-off in my logbook. We went out one time.
Yeah, but you still needed the 90-day recurrency.
Yeah, which I would do. So that part of my flying wasn't illegal.
Oh,
there were other parts that were questionable. So I had a lot of solo time, and I was flying back and forth to the gold mine for that first summer. I think I started that. I had 17 hours in my logbook when I first started flying back and forth to work. There's no way to know what the weather is when you leave the gold mine. It's remote. There's no connectivity. I could call flight service if everything was working right. There was sort of a radio connection, telephone to radio type connection. And but flight service in Alaska is a little different. One time they told me, oh yeah, Super Cub got through Merrill Pass an hour ago. You'll be fine.
Yeah. I had the same experience when I flew in Alaska.
They're very encouraging, right? Yeah. And they believe that Super Cub reported 500-foot ceilings. So
I'm frowning. I'm frowning.
Right. Yeah. So here I am. I'm this, product of the Alaska flying culture, which is, at the time at least, not the best culture, a little bit of a renegade, I guess you could say. And Mike and Bob got me into aerobatics. I got my license, I buckled down, got my license. I started competing in aerobatics, and things that I would do at very low altitude, I was suddenly afraid to do at 1,500 feet. And I think it was because I was wiser and I understood the need for margin and for safety.
Right.
The FAA rules actually make a lot of sense.
They do indeed.
The FAA gets a lot of things right.
I am a fan of the FAR, just so you know.
Yeah.
Many people aren't, but I am a fan of it.
Yeah. So when we are critical of certain elements, I think it's important that we recognize that this is the flight training industry. It's not the FAA that we're critical of. The FAA actually sets the standards within the ACS, but those standards come as a product of the desire of the market, and that's the flight training market. So a lot of this really comes down to schools. And I think, or we think, that schools have it wrong. They're catering to the airlines, giving the airlines what they think they want, not what they really want.
Yeah, I think it's interesting.
Yeah.
A friend of mine refers to it as the jet mentality.
Yeah.
Right. That it's sort of like taken over pieces of the FAA as well.
Right.
But it's pointless to be critical of the FAA simply because if you get right down to it, the federal aviation regulations are, to the greatest possible degree, written with the right intent and very often with the right solution. And so they establish barriers, some of which seem completely arbitrary. Why is it 2,000 feet clear of clouds and not 1,500 and so forth?
Right.
So there's a little bit of memorization going on. And people are wary of the FAR because it's how you get into trouble and conceivably how you might even lose your license, right? But read with any intelligence whatsoever, you can simply look at them and say, well, that's just common sense.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what I would do anyway.
Yeah, and they really do take an approach of, unless it says you can't do it, you can.
Yeah, I love that.
It's a great philosophy.